Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi.
It is the 19th of the 9th, 2013, and this is your radioactive reality. Start on E&E News, shall we? Officials concerned about 400-foot tall pipe near Fukushima reactors collapsing during quake. 8 cracks found in the support brace. Government orders immediate investigation. TEPCO's unsure how to access the area as radiation levels around it are 10 sieverts per hour. And as you know, if you've been following this, 10 sieverts per hour is a lethal dose to human beings. Messes with hardware the whole bit, so it's really hard for them to get a hold of. What they're not telling you is that TEPCO's measurements max out at 10 sieverts per hour, and it could be much, much higher than that. And it's the support beam supporting the exhaust pipe in between, I believe, 2 and 3 reactor, and God knows what's down in there. And the radiation disintegrates and weakens the metal, so eventually that will fall over on top of an already saturated mud pit that is Fukushima Daiichi.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi.
They'll be calling you radical. There's been an earthquake right underneath the Fukushima plant, and everybody's going psycho crazy, and they should be. Now, it's 13 miles under. Let's talk about this. So I was asked yesterday by 2 different people in 2 separate interviews about China syndrome, what I felt like was going to happen. Look, China syndrome is very real. This going on, we're talking, what, 920 days over there? The tritium levels in TEPCO's own trenches over the last 90 days have told the tale, up 10 times, up 100 times, up another 10 times. As Einstein himself worked on this theory, as far as the most powerful concept in others is compounding. It wasn't about finance. Compounding is about exactly this, fission. It's going on. Now, I was asked yesterday how I thought it would play out because nothing's been done. If you think China syndrome nuclear fission isn't real, you are as naive as they get. And if you believe any word that comes from Habe and these lying pieces of shit IAEA by now, the World Health Organization, the mass nuclear media, if you're believing anything, we are the media, period. Their credibility is completely gone, completely gone. So don't be posting the bullshit there. I mean, my accuracy and our small army's accuracy, we've told the tale in detail. We're the media, period. Now, what I believe will happen, as far as, because people have hypothesized, that's the word China syndrome, burn all the way through the earth. Well, it's going to continue to freaking, these are gamma alpha rays that have unforeseen in the history of mankind. This has never happened before. So we have to rely on science. And what we know as far as science, and the tritium levels are proving it over and over in TEPCO's own trenches. So, is it going to spew these giant glaciers up in the air? Maybe. But I believe this is exactly what happened just now, is what's going to happen. I think more and more of it's going to happen. And I think you're going to start to see eruptions and ruptures through the seawall into the Pacific. And how scary is this? Can you believe not? I mean, here's number 4 sitting there. And people say, oh, they went dry. Yeah, they did go dry. And a lot of that, and I cannot overemphasize this. I cannot overemphasize this. It is safer to live in Tokyo, Japan than San Francisco, California, Portland, Maine, New York City, New York, Lansing, Michigan, Dallas, Texas, Los Angeles, California, Vancouver, Canada, Toronto, Montreal, Glasgow, Scotland, London, England, Ireland, over and over and over. The wind was blowing out when the plume went over us, and the plume was heavy, very heavy. Radnet did not work. We know what the numbers were. They were gigantic, and cancer is spiking here. This is a big story. This is directly underneath, 13 miles under. Do I believe that it's the gamma rays have made it 13 miles down? Oh yeah, absolutely, easily. I mean, I remember TEPCO's trenches in the early days. I think about day 70 or 80, they went down, and they were already pouring thousands of feet down then. Einstein's own words. The most powerful force on Earth is compound. That's exactly what's going on. That's the tritium levels. These guys have been in the tritium level. And I love it how all you guys will talk about tritium, strontium, cesium, but nobody dares mention Pu. Pu, the heavy metal that's all over all of us. You don't get one without the other. Cancer is spiking. This is very real. You can stay in denial all you want. The black and yellow journalism, the Uncle Tom media, the Uncle Tom science world, they make me sick. The marine biologists, I will leave it with Rachel Carson, the only real marine biologist. This great quote of hers, I will leave it with that. This is a big story. And I think we're going to see more and more of this happen. Is number 4 going to end up going down? My guess it probably will, because there's nothing being done. The international, nobody's going to do that. So I think they're just like, let's see, let it fall and see what happens. I think the atomic world out there and the apparatus there be, they have no solutions. They're like, well, let's see. Just like when they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. Oppenheimer's own words. Did we know that it would suck out the entire atmosphere? We didn't know if it would suck out the entire atmosphere and end all of humanity, all of life on Earth, but we did it anyway. That's what's going on with them right now. It's the same thought process. They're doing this anyway. This isn't Russian roulette. This isn't freaking American roulette. This is Japan roulette. This is Earth roulette. And there are only double zeros on this wheel. Stand tuned, and I'll see if I can find out any more information. I got calls in. Yeah, you'll say, well, it was only 5.3, but it's directly underneath. You know, inlet a little bit, but it's scary shit. Yeah, number 4, yeah, hell yes. It's a big deal. All them spent fuel in there, moxied fuel in there, we're spewing. But what is China syndrome really doing? China syndrome is nuclear fission. It is nuclear fission. It's very real. We've never experienced it before. Never, never, never in the history of humanity. So the nuclear industry, the lying scum, evil fucking cartel that they are, they're using us, they're using the Earth as a human experiment, just like they did my father and the atomic veteran in the trenches. If you don't think it mutates the gene, think about this. His whole family's alive. He died young, the healthiest of them all. And then his son, me, gets the very same disease. If that doesn't prove gene mutation, I don't know what does. Stand.
We need to get subscribed and get this unity stronger and beat YouTube at their own game. Okay, that's what this is about. Like I say, go to the remix button, hit the remix button. That way you'll have this video and keep up with this. Otherwise, you know, YouTube's just going to control us, guys, and it's really bad.
A special shout out to all my commentators. A special shout out. Wayne Dog 1, Carolyn S, Mega Triumph 1, Laura Pickle, Mr. AAC 2020, Sean Novillo, It's All Good. It's all good. Sorry about that. It's all space good. How do you make the spaces? Can anyone tell me how to make the spaces? Please leave a comment on that. I'm not sure. See how there's 2 words? Like Laura Pickle? How do you make this space? If anyone knows, please put it in my comments. Alrighty then. Paul Slaw 114 P period E period P period Stokes Pep Stokes Sam Drab. See, I want to show it to you because sometimes I'll say it this way they can see where to go if they want to check out your channel. Cody Swiftcaster, Create Harmony, Quaalude Charlie, Cloudy 011. Heads up, Stephen Bardo. How's it going? Let's see. Amanda World. No. A Mad Mauve World. Anthony Zimba 58. Catherine Wywoski, heads up. Shout out to you guys. A for effort 747. Mega Triumph 1. Again, hey. Fox 250R. Sean Navarro again. Mega Triumph again. There's Sean Navarro. Sandy Green. There's Sandy Green. Now check this one out. Coming up. Enki Nibiru Prince. How about that one? Enki Nibiru Prince. Frank interpret some of the book of Revelation. All right. Sheila Clemens. Natalie Austin. Again, if you can tell me how to put this space between to make two words on a channel, I would really much appreciate it. I've sent feedback back with that question and I never got a response to any feedback, really. Jimmy Richardson, there he is. Jimmy Richardson, Mr. Arc 2020, a couple times. Here we go. Murray Rolling. Parachet Riboloma. Irish Temper 58. Miss Luna. That's a cool name. Miss Luna. With a space in between. Alrighty then. Jimmy Richardson. Rosh Chara. Jackie. Per the Pow 1. United States of Crazy. That's a cool name. They're all cool names. Rick Blackman. Or Rich Blackman. V. Mike. Sue Ortiz. Heads up. Lance Matthews. Dipe Strathen Joris. Jim B. Michael Handelman. No lies, just truth me. Shout out to all you guys. Excellent names of channels. People watching might want to go to their channels and check them out also. Alrighty then. Thanks for commenting. Moving on to the show now.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi.
Live, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is September 19th, 2013, and here are your news updates for today. The only way to watch yesterday's show is to go to my main channel. Go to my channel, and then hit play. And it will do all of them in a row. I just couldn't merge them together because there was a problem with the Nibiru Magic 2012 video. Because he must have said something, because by editing his in, it kept making everything unavailable. I couldn't play the video. So I had to scatter around that so I could get the information out to you guys. Alright, we have plenty of news today. And my shout out to all my commentators, and you must have just saw that, hopefully. And away we go. Let's go into the, we don't have to go into the E&E News Fukushima because Nibiru Magic gave that one on the head of this program. Let's go into the E&E News U.S. Canada. All we have is yesterday's professor. New studies show radioactive materials being carried across Pacific relatively intact from Fukushima on West Coast. We need to monitor these pockets of high contamination. Parts of areas may be affected in a significant way. Alrighty then, let's move on. we'll go to the breaking news, breakingnews.com. There was no new watchers, not really, and then nothing has changed on the Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. Wonder what's going on with them. Alrighty then. Let's see what we got going on here. Also, Kevin Blanche has reported that there has been an earthquake, and it hasn't shown up yet on anything that I've noticed from NHK, that there was an earthquake right underneath Fukushima, underneath the plant. Wonder what that means. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Alright, 37 minutes ago, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport has a ground stop in effect for arriving aircraft because of weather. Heads up, coming out of NBC, DFW. Alrighty then. Dallas-Fort Worth Airport has a ground stop in effect for arriving aircraft because of weather. Let's see what else we got. I think that's all we have right now, so stay tuned. I'm attaching today's Nutrimedical report. How's that one? I got it loading right now. So stay tuned, and I'll see you again on the flip side. And we're going into the eve of Friday. Oh yes. Yes, we're in the eve of Friday, and the weekend's coming up. And it's 4 days down. 1 to go before the weekend. Actually, this was my weekend. Now I go back to work. See you again on the flip side. Stay safe. And I might start counting down from October, do an October 1st countdown, since there's a big heads up on that date. Alrighty then. Or basically, I'll count down from October 2nd. The day after October 1st. Alright, take care, and I'll see you again on the flip side. Stay tuned, a lot more news coming up.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi.
Welcome to the Fairwinds Energy Education Podcast for Thursday, September 19th. Today we're talking with Lucas Hickson and Arnie Gunderson about Fairwinds' most recently released report on fitness for duty. So we're going to start out this conversation by talking about what fitness for duty actually means.
Fairwinds has been working on a report about fitness for duty for several months now. The events at the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. this week sort of drive home the question of what does it really mean to be fit for duty. In nuclear jargon, it means that your behavior is not deviant in some way. It means that you're not using drugs, or that your behavior is not abnormal and threatening to others. You don't want your airline pilot to show up drunk, and you don't want your nuclear reactor operator to be on drugs. That's really the beginning of a fitness for duty program that's mandated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. When you sign up to work at a nuclear plant, you sign up for random drug testing, random alcohol testing. And at least once a year, you get lucky, win the lottery, and get tested. But you can also get tested when you appear to have aberrant behavior. You know, if you're staggering as you walk down the hallway or you smell a booze, you can get tested. That's not a random test. So when an employee fails this test, or when a contractor fails this test, they report it to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in something called an ENR, an Event Notification Report. And these are published, and they go back for years. So what Fairwinds decided to do was have our ACE researcher, Lucas Hickson, go through the last 5 years of ENRs and see what we can learn about just how fit nuclear reactor operators are when they're running their nuclear reactor.
Lucas, when you started to delve deeper into the research, what kind of trends started to emerge?
Well, I think the first thing that we discovered was that there is a definite increase in the trends of reported fitness for duty events. In this 5-year window that we looked at, they more than doubled, almost 2.5 times what they were in 2008 and 2013. So I think that's one of the first things that we noted.
Yeah, then that's pretty darn serious. You know, there used to be 15 fitness for duty violations a year, essentially one a month, and now we're over 40, essentially, you know, almost one a week. So something's happening in these nuclear plants, and the program hasn't changed, but yet more people are getting caught, which means that more people might be using drugs and alcohol.
So why do you think that is? Why are more people using drugs and alcohol?
I don't think it's any one factor. I would more attribute it to a number of factors, but I think that's why we wanted to do further analysis on the data. So there are some things that we can further extrapolate from this.
The report's available on the website. Table 1 in the report talks about the fact that alcohol and general fitness for duty issues have increased dramatically.
If you go to graph 2, you'll actually note that the number of reported violations that go through the NRC's event notification system is in fact only a small percentage of the total violations. And so to understand this, you really have to go back to the regulations. And what we find there is that licensees are only required to report what are deemed significant events. There are fitness for duty events which are deemed non-reportable, which means essentially they are assuming that people are going to violate the fitness for duty program at every nuclear power plant. And here in the second graph, we've done a random selection of 5 nuclear power plants, and we took their 2012 reported fitness for duty events and compared them to the number of total violations in the annual fitness for duty report that's submitted. And we found, as I alluded, that there is a small number actually being captured and reported to the NRC through the event notification system when compared to the total number of violations. Following the event notification system is not always the most accurate way to track these events at nuclear power plants.
Yeah, so let's go back to slide 1 there. Slide 1 talks about the fact that we have almost tripled the number of fitness for duty reportable events. But in fact, if you go over to slide 2, there's almost 5 to 7 times more that are unreported.
You don't want to think about these reactor operators at the wheel intoxicated.
Yeah, then you would hope that when they were, it would show up reportable, but as slide 2 shows, they're not reporting unless thresholds are met. You know what I found interesting was slide 3. What we did was we looked at the 10 worst list and stacked them up, and a vast majority of the 10 worst nuclear reactors are in what we would call the Deep South. The NRC calls it Region 2. It's Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida.
Another thing that I found was interesting was the discrepancy of the choice among licensee employees and among contractors and vendors. And I've had a few discussions with people like Arnie and like Dave Lockbaum about, you know, what can we really see from this? But what we did for this one is we look at the NRC's annual fitness for duty report, which collects the annual data submitted by the licensees and compiles it in a larger format report. And one of the things that we were able to pull from this is the fact that among licensee employees, over half of them are related to alcohol. But among contractors, there's a much smaller number who are abusing alcohol in comparison with those who are abusing drugs, like marijuana is one of the leading offenders. And this was a very large discrepancy.
If you're employed by the reactor operator, most of those people, when they win the lottery and get tested, are testing positive for alcohol, more than half. But if you're a contractor, you're just in for a specific job and you're let go, more than half of those are testing positive for marijuana. It seems like the drug of choice for contractors is marijuana, which lingers in your blood longer, whereas the drug of choice if you're an employee is some form of alcohol, which pretty much disappears from your blood within a day. So to catch an employee with alcohol in a sample basically means that the relatively high alcohol consumption on the employee side of the people that run a nuclear power plant.
When we say large discrepancy here, let me give you some actual numbers. About 1 out of every 2 event for duty reports, fitness for duty related reports, are related to alcohol among licensee employees. Among contractors and vendors, that's 1 in 5. 1 in 5 positive tests among contractors and vendors are related to alcohol. For licensee employees, 1 in 4 events are related to marijuana. Among contractors and vendors, that's 1 in 2.
So there really is two different cultures on site. There's an alcohol culture and there's the marijuana culture. And the table, which is table number 4 in the report, clearly shows a huge distinction. The other thing about that table is that there's not a big distinction between cocaine. One is 10%, one is 12%. So they're essentially cocaine use, whether you're an employee or a contractor, is about the same. The big difference is in marijuana versus booze.
One of the other things that we noticed from these trends is that it's not just showing up drunk to work. As Arnie alluded to earlier, there's not many jobs that you can show up drunk to work or under the influence of drugs and still keep your job. And that's the same in the nuclear industry. They generally face very strict punishments for these offenses. It can go from a couple years suspension to permanent termination of employment. You're pretty much blacklisted within the industry. It's not just that people are breaking the Fitness for Duty program. It's pretty much with intent. They are aware of the consequences of these actions, and they're also aware of this Fitness for Duty program, which is essentially a see something, say something program on steroids, where everyone is supposed to be keeping everyone else accountable for their actions and for their deeds, and if they see something that doesn't fit with their normal behavior, then it's supposed to be reported. So even though they know that they're going to be under close scrutiny, they're still doing these things. And they're not just showing up under the influence. They're bringing the contraband to the plant. They're bringing the alcohol. They're bringing the drugs. And in some cases, it has been documented with intent to distribute. You also have places, for example, Braidwood stands out. They've had multiple violations where they are, after the fact, finding alcohol containers hidden above the ceiling. And, it's not just 1 or 2 offenses, but a number of them.
I talk about aberrant behavior. We've got a case of 2 Exelon reactor operators. One held a woman up at gunpoint and kidnapped her in her car. The other one didn't tell the FBI the correct information, covering up for his buddy. Now that, to me, is certainly aberrant behavior, yet there was no fitness for duty report filed for those guys. So in fact, these numbers, if anything, are low when you look at the aberrant behavior of nuclear employees.
I'm going to go in a little bit more detail on this, too. So we're talking about the Michael Berman, Landon Britton case, both of whom were licensed reactor operators at the Dresden nuclear power plant. Michael Berman, it came out through the course of testimony through his trial that he was attempting to recruit other workers at the nuclear power plant to commit crimes with him. And in the end, it appears that he did successfully attempt to recruit at least one other worker. They got a gun, they got masks, they went and Michael Berman held a young woman up with a semi-automatic pistol in her face, hijacked her car, then was caught and told the police that it was just a thrill-seeking thing. He was later put on trial. During the course of his trial, he had been given an ankle monitoring bracelet and was put under house arrest. He then cut off that monitoring bracelet, ran out in the lamp, and has been missing ever since. It has been reported that he is in Venezuela. Later caught Landon Britton, his accomplice. He's now in prison in Illinois and is awaiting trial for the same offenses. But as Arnie said, none of these events were reported through the event notification system. Not the fact that you had licensed operators who were attempting to collude to commit criminal acts while on duty, but also the fact that they actually carried out their plan. And so, as Arnie said, that's very concerning because these are definite aberrant behaviors that should not be happening on duty.
Lucas is right on the issue of, these guys at Dresden were talking to their fellow employees. At some point, the see something, say something, one would expect if the system really worked, that a fellow employee would turn these guys in. It didn't happen. So if anything, the information in the Fairwinds report is under-projecting the fitness for duty problems at nuclear plants.
And there's one last finding I would like to add to this. And that is the fact that many of these reports that are coming in, especially ones related to licensed reactor operators, are actually coming from off-duty reports. People getting pulled over driving under the influence. What I'm saying is it's not actually happening because of the Fitness for Duty program, but it's actually being reported through the Fitness for Duty program, which just like with the MLB steroids issue, there are more players using it than have been caught. We have to assume the same in this type of situation. There are more people at nuclear power plants that are using drugs and alcohol than are being reported through the Fitness for Duty program. And so it really questions the efficiency of the program. When you think about the fact that there are lots of outside reports, figure about the fact that only a fraction of them are reported within a short amount of time. And when you also consider the fact that not many of these actual violations are being caught and recorded, we really have to question whether or not it's effective. Is it really changing the way that workers come to work every day? Do they view this as an effective program, or is it just another process which can be evaded?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Lucas, and I think that the people living around these plants have to consider this, because certainly this report, as most Fair Winds reports, is about public safety. The people living around these plants are not as safe as the NRC would like them to believe that they are.
So we hope that people in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission slice and dice the data like we did. There's a lot of conclusions. Why has the fitness for duty problems gone up threefold in 5 years? Why are most of fitness for duty issues not reported? Why are most of the problems in the Deep South, in Region 2? And why is there that weird break between the alcohol consumption of employees and the drug consumption of contractors?
Fitness for duty violations that are occurring are showing drug and alcohol dependencies among workers. But the Fitness for Duty program is also supposed to catch mental deficiency. For example, you have an employee that is thinking of acts of sabotage. It's supposed to catch these type of aberrant behaviors before they happen. So now, there's also situations like with this Michael Berman case, where it's not catching those. If we're not even catching the easy ones, the drug and alcohol-related offenses, how can we be assured of the fact that this program is capable of catching these other more serious yet less apparent type of violations that come along with intent and the actual operator actions?
Well, I want to thank you, Lucas, for slicing and dicing the data as well as you did. And I hope that when our readers will take a look at it, and two, I hope our regulators take a look at it, and our representatives in government take a look at it, because this is a situation which is getting worse, not better.
Well, thank you both for being on with me today. This is clearly an issue that's going to require a lot more attention.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
That's interesting. Welcome back, and our historian, geopolitical military analyst, Tim Alexander's back. And Tim, you pop in on various days, and of course put up information on the our live stream TV channel as well. You've got an interesting point you made just in the break, just before the show started. I'd like you to expand on that and tell us what all this means.
Today, I think the place we're at right now is kind of between the verge of the Third World War, a war in Syria. I think we've kind of temporarily at least won that, and the next stuff coming down the road. But if you don't know history, you don't know where you're at and don't know where you're going. And there's two very important events, anniversaries that are coming up. Commemorating the Russian fleets of autumn 1863 is an interesting article that's out. In September the 24th, 1863, the Russian Baltic Fleet arrived in New York City. And a few days later, on October 12th, the Russian Pacific Squadron arrived in San Francisco. Now, Tsar Alexander II sent these fleets to the United States to protect the United States from a joint invasion by Britain and France. And this This all goes to the power of the Rothschild-dominated global banking cartel and why we had a civil war. Slavery was a great problem, not only in the United States, but around the world. Most countries managed to end slavery without having a vicious war. And the American Civil War killed more Americans than any war we've ever been in, including this, the 12-year nonsense in Afghanistan, World War I, World War II, etc. No war has been more bloody to Americans than the American Civil War. Well, the Rothschilds set the Civil War up. In fact, they caused the War of 1812. But they set the Civil War up by buying up newspapers and driving the North and the South further apart. We could have reached consensus. Slavery was getting to the point where it really wasn't profitable. And slavery was a vicious, horrible thing that was always about economic exploitation. But anyway, so we got into a vicious civil war. Now, Abe Lincoln, he said, I have two enemies. He said, I have the rebels in front of me and the bankers behind me. And he said, of the two, the bankers are by far the most dangerous. Now, the Rothschilds in their London branch were loaning money to the Confederacy. The French branch wanted to loan money to the Union Army at 30% interest. And Lincoln said, there's no way in hell I'm paying 30% interest on money. That's virtually usury levels. And he said, look, why do we need to buy money, to borrow money from these clowns in Europe in the first place? We can issue our own money, and we'll do that. Greenbacks, they were called. And he did. And let me read something that a London newspaper published, and I'm getting this on Mike Rivero article today because he did it really well. But what a major London paper said was, if this mischievous financial policy, which has its origins in North America, shall become indurated down to the future, then that government will furnish its own money without cost. It will pay off debts and be without debt. It will have all the money necessary to carry on its commerce. It will become prosperous without precedent in the history of the world. The brains, wealth, and wealth of all countries will go to North America. That country must be destroyed, or it will destroy every monarchy on the globe. And that was the London Times. And they were referring to Lincoln's decision to issue government greenbacks to finance the Civil War rather than pay the Rothschild banks 30% interest. Britain and France, encouraged by the banking clans, were prepared to invade the United States, but it was the Russian fleet off of New York and off of San Francisco that prevented that from happening. Now, right after the Civil War ended, President Lincoln was assassinated, and there is good historical evidence to indicate that the scheme was financed by the global banking cartel families. A year later, Tsar Alexander II was also assassinated, and again, same suspects. Now, how does all this tie in together? Well, it does, because we have had an element in the United States, in France, in the United Kingdom, that have been screaming at the top of their lungs, we've got to go in to Syria, we've got to invade, we've got to take military action. They're gassing their own people. There's always something they're doing. Somebody's always doing something, and it's always a prime cause for we've got to go to war. Of course, the war kills 10 to 100 or 1,000 times more people than whatever it was we went in the war for in the first place, but that's forgotten. Well, something happened in the House of Commons. Now, I know a number of people in the House of Commons, and I'm a British peer of the realm, but I don't claim to be any kind of expert on the British House of Commons. But something happened. My guess is even maybe at the very top, the Prime Minister wanted it to happen. I can't swear to that, but I kind of think maybe that's the case. But what happened is the government lost a vote, and suddenly the people in the House of Commons, the members of Parliament, about maybe 3 weeks ago, said no. The United Kingdom is not going to go to war against Syria. We do not support that, and we will not support that. And that put a stop to it. Now, why did these people get off the party line, so to speak? Well, the reason, I think, is politicians tend to be very self-centered, very narcissistic. That's how they get by. They tend to be, I call them political whores. Their morality is just about non-existent. But being narcissistic, the idea that we might have been entering maybe the Third World War, and it wouldn't be safe to come out of your caves, your bunkers for years. Somehow that managed to get through to a lot of MPs that this is crazy. This is beyond crazy. This makes no sense to anybody to start a Third World War with 21st century weapons of mass destruction. And suddenly enough of them said, no, I'm not going along with this. And it stopped. And then all of a sudden, on the American side, you got more and more. Basically, the reason that we've had kind of an agreement brokered by Russia is they knew, Obama knew he didn't have the votes. He didn't have the votes in the House of Representatives. He didn't have the votes in the Senate to go to war. Why? Well, because you got a lot of congressmen and senators say, hold it, we go to war. I can't play my Tuesday and Thursday golf games. The golf course won't exist,
Somewhat radioactive if there is a golf course at all.
Yeah, and okay, maybe I get a spot in a bunker for congressmen, but what kind of life is that?
Oh, yeah, they even call them hotels, but it's like living inside a tomb. I call it. How about if you have what's called sarcophagophobia, which means fear of being in a sarcophagus, if you're out there and you're a global elite, how about being like the Morlocks of the time machine, locked underground for 80,000 years?
Exactly. And so we are now at a very strange place in human history, and we need to talk about that when we get back, because we've got opportunities and dangers.
Absolutely. Back in a moment with Tim Alexander. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk about the danger of the nuke trial causing a Chernobyl-style event and nuclear reactors and blowing our power grid to pieces from these idiots in our government. And we're back with Tim. Expand on your thesis that you're mentioning there, because I think people need to see the spiritual side of this, which is why you're one of the best broadcaster and analysts on this, because you understand the spiritual military applications of the demonic horde. I call it the people of clay and iron, which is our ministry, Clay and Iron Ministries. That's why the other website's clayandiron.com, and you're going to start to see a lot of news items, articles there, and prophetic warnings, because we're getting very close to the time of Jacob's trouble. Obama on January 13th promised a partitioning of the state, and we have the demonic horde, as I mentioned off air, the worst of the worst, and are trying to pull those who are even billionaires or corrupt over their little red line that says, no, I don't want to be able to die. I want to be able to drive my Bentley or take my private Airstream jet, and go to my private island, or you go with my fancy yacht and circle the globe. That's not possible if you have World War III. It's not possible if you have. And
I think people at many levels are waking up to that. If you're like most of us, and be it Dr. or Earl Sterling or what other notwithstanding, we're just average people. We have families, we have friends, we go down to the store in our car. We have a normal life. And that will end if World War III happens. That will end if the total global economy absolutely crashes because these banksters want to get to their new world order.
Right.
Okay, now what we have right now that's happening, and it's because of the alternative media, and to some extent, indirectly, it's because of the mainstream media. 15, 16 years ago, I was working to set up a third, what I called the Third Millennium Global News. It was going to be the fourth evening half-hour television newscast nationwide. And at the last, I had $175 million in venture capital funding lined up. Last minute, my wife was found to have terminal ovarian cancer, and I canceled everything to take care of her. She died 11 months later. But anyway, at that time, you know, there were 20-some companies that were major players in the mainstream news media, and some smaller ones that were significant players. And I knew some of these people. I knew the heads of some of them in both the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Well, what's happened since then, you now have 6 companies that own roughly 95 to 97% of mainstream news media in America, and the same is true in many other countries in the first world. You have this incredible concentration, and they're all dominated, and all the lines of control go back to the global banking cartel families, and the people that running them are almost all exclusively Zionists. So you get this, you get the party line. If you turn on, and I haven't even watched ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox for several months now, but I'm probably better educated, and I read more news on a daily basis than 100 average people, because all you get from them is propaganda, and it's becoming very apparent. You know, in the Soviet Union, the Pravda, which means truth, was the big newspaper in Moscow, and the joke was there is no truth in the truth. And people just, they blacked out that nonsense because it was just lies and just petty nonsense that they realized that it meant nothing. It was, why bother to read this crap, because it's nothing but lies. Well, we've got kind of to that point now where if you have a brain and you listen to NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox, etc., you know that this is propaganda. It's gobbledygook. It's written for a mentality of an 8th grader. And if you're an adult with a brain, you say, you know, this doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. So people are going to something that's called the Internet, the greatest source of knowledge and information in human history. And the globalists absolutely hate it, but now that it's here, you know, it's very difficult even for them to kill it. It's going to take a global war for them to really pull the plug. And people can go to the Internet, go to shows like yours, go to websites like mine, Europe, and they can actually get some news, some real news. And people are doing that, and people are waking up, and they're saying, hold it, we've had wars for umpteen years now in the Middle East, wars that basically benefit who? Well, they don't benefit the American public. They certainly don't benefit our poor boys that are getting shot and killed over there. Who are they benefiting? Well, let's see. They benefit the military-industrial complex. They benefit those families that own the Federal Reserve System, because that's the biggest driver of deficit spending there is war. They benefit the expansionist racists in Israel with their Greater Israel concept. But the great bulk of the American people, and even the Israeli people, and then the European people, it doesn't benefit them. It's a super tiny elite, and those guys are nuts. Well, they're nuts if you view things from a human perspective. That maybe a third world war with 21st century weapons of mass destruction makes absolutely no sense. There's no justification for it, and it's going to wipe out most of us. Nobody wins in that war. It's a demonic-driven event. And when you get there, then you begin to say, And this is all tied into the Federal Reserve System. This is all tied into the fact that we're now in a global depression, even though they keep telling us we're in a recovery with 100 million Americans of working age out of work, a recovery with 50 million families in the United States on food stamps. That's a recovery? I don't think so. You know,
yeah. Then of course
we have
Ben Bernanke printing more money, which is on Drudge Report today. They show a picture of a toilet roll with dollars on it. The dollar's plunging. The stock market's going into orbit.
Listen, literally, you can get the point. In Farmer Rhodesia, they printed so much currency they were in the $1,000 or trillion-dollar bills area. In Germany, after the First World War, I have a collection of old worthless currency here, and I mean, I paid 10 cents or less for some of this stuff that was thousands and tens of thousands of marks, German marks, and it literally wouldn't buy you a loaf of bread. So you can get into place in terms of inflation very quickly. But the point is, and I teach at a college, and I deal with people, young people on a daily basis. You know, I ask my students, if you really wanted to, can you go out and get a job, $10 an hour, 40 hours a week, maybe in a couple of weeks? And most of them say no. $10 an hour is nothing. $10 an hour you can't raise a family on. That's $400 a week. Maybe in the 50s that was a lot of money. In the 60s it wasn't bad. But in 2013, it's starvation. It's food stamp money. And why are we here? We're here because deliberate policies to destroy the United States, to destroy the middle class, and they've all been done by these demonic people that want to bring death, destruction, and hurt to the planet. And now we have an opportunity to reach out and put a stop to this. Well, as believers, God's given us some time.
He's given us some grace. We'll be back in a moment with Tim. Joining us, Chris Harris, a major update on the NERC. Welcome back, and Tim, we are joined with Chris Harris. Chris, there's lots of things to talk about, so let's roll. We got the NERC, North American Corporation, testing and dangerously testing the integrity of the power grid system and the possibility of causing a Chernobyl style, which was triggered off by a test, nuclear meltdown, the danger of destroying power grid infrastructure and equipment, and of course we have a major update on Fukushima. So let's fill us in the details.
Okay, yeah, starting off with the grid exercise, I'm really glad that Professor McCanny was on your program also expressing concern about that. I guess I wasn't alone, and rightfully so. You know, the grid is a complicated animal. It's out there. It doesn't run by itself, and it takes a lot of people to keep it stable and to keep the voltage up. And really, to do that, they're constant decision-making with people, the system operators out there. If they do something stupid during this exercise and actually inject some sort of a signal that would destabilize the grid and cause operators to have to instantly respond, well, there's going to be a mistake. And we also know that we don't even know how the whole system works, just based on the San Diego loss of power that we had several years ago. We discussed that on your program also, because we didn't understand the ramifications of not dropping off the low voltage loads on that. And everybody thought it would be just fine, and it wasn't. It actually dragged down the voltage and it caused the sample. So we don't even know how the thing works. And
it burned out the steam turbines, and this can happen in geriatric reactors. These were new, within 2 years old, new steam turbines, 2 of them, from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, totally burned out. Most of the reactors in America are 50 years plus old, with lots of nuclear material on site. Infrastructure has not been hardened. The power grid was hardened in Canada, but not hardened in America after they had major reports back since the 1987 power blackout in Quebec City. And in northern Quebec that actually blacked out all the way to the northeastern United States to New York City. Since that time, America has done nothing. This is insanity. And what's going on now is we now have the outgoing director of DHS threatening us that there's going to be a power blackout and they're going to do this test. There's a 100% chance of a CME caused by the sun. They're going to actually do it on the dates, according to McCanny, which is the closest pass in the plasma alignment with Mercury that can do a CME, but they don't have any absolute knowledge if it's going to be Earth-directed. And then they're talking about cyber terrorism. So the government, I think, all the signs are up that they're trying to do a false flag. And the fact is, even just testing the system without properly stressing the nuclear technicians on site of these nuclear reactors and the power grid, this is a stupid activity that hasn't previously hardened the grid before they do the test.
It's a potentially stupid activity, and just remember, as you correctly stated, that Chernobyl was also caused by an evolution that was not completely thought through, and it wasn't wholeheartedly. The system wasn't actually operated correctly, and that's what brought us Chernobyl. It was a completely self-induced event, and here we're going to do something. Even if it's not going to be a false flag, as I said last week, you're still going to tax the operators into having to do something. These are people that have to make split-second decisions, and that's not a good idea. So don't let this go live, and don't let it and don't even let it get out of control. And that's what I'm admonishing the NERC designers of the exercise to do. The ramifications could be widespread, and whether they even want that to happen or not, it could happen by itself. That's all I'm saying. Very, very
exactly. Yeah.
As it is. Okay. Well, we had some, as we discussed before.
What about Fukushima? Fukushima had a massive release of 1,000+ tons of radioactive water in advance of the typhoon that struck, and today had a 5.3 earthquake in the Fukushima prefecture. So the plant is breaking down. We posted up all the links that you've sent me, Chris. This is very insane. There's no international action by the United States government, NATO, the United Nations, the International Atomic Energy Agency. As they say in New Jersey, nobody knows or nobody's doing nothing. It's just amazing. Yeah, well,
we also looked at, yes, that's right, I did look at that. There was an earthquake today, right after we talked this afternoon, and I don't have any reports of any damage, but that doesn't mean nothing happened, because even in some of the headlines that we're talking about today, the plant vent that's shared between Fukushima Unit 1 and Unit 2 is found to have cracks in the support structure of the 400-foot plant vent. It's a big pipe that goes vertical, and you can see it looks like the Eiffel Tower, kind of a truss type of a tower. So I don't know if anything happened to that yet. And also in some of the headlines, if you're a civil servant now in Japan and you go ahead and start telling the truth about Fukushima, why you could be put in jail. That's
or an actress or a journalist that's not certified by the government to have the right to speak. If you're even a certified journalist when carrying a journalism card and you speak without government approval, you're going to the big house.
Yeah, and that's really, so what are they hiding? Well, obviously they're hiding something. And
right after the 2020 Olympics,
guys, they can throw us all in jail, but they can't make that radiation go away.
Well, actually, after they run the 2020 Olympics, they're thinking up all the new radioactive events they can have, like the plutonium javelin throw, the tritium Olympic swimming competition.
You have a great imagination, Dr. Bill.
I would say the
glow-in-the-dark contest,
We turn off all the lights and we see if the Olympic competitors can run around the race and not bump into each other, because all they have to do is keep their eyes open, and the radioactivity from their body through their eyes will actually see their way through the dark.
What the most important article, headline would be, and it would have to be that Fukushima Unit 3 still has steam sporadically venting from it. Remember, we talked about this a long time ago that cold shutdown is a myth. For those, and I stand by that. I stood by that for several years.
The only thing cold is the bodies of the new Fukushima workers, including the recent death of the director that was a hero trying to do at least something in the face of getting no funding, no support from the Japanese government, no support from General Electric, which, by the way, was The International General Electric Director was one of the so-called czars under the Abominator. That's his term, by the way, from now on. I don't want to hear him call Obama or the president. His name is Abominator.
Of these facilities, and things are going to get worse and worse. So you have to ask yourself, after a period of time, are we dealing with a multi-year gross incompetency? Are we dealing with a kill program by the globalists? Is this something even more sinister? Is it raw stupidity, or is it something really evil?
How about raw evil mixed with malevolent stupidity? Welcome back, and Chris, the situation in Fukushima is going to get considerably worse. I'll tell you, I live in Southern California. A lot of people, oh, you poor people in Southern California. No. The radiation may be worse in St. Louis or in Eastern Europe. It can go over transpolar. You need to filter your water, whether you're getting well water or groundwater. It's going to eventually get to your well. You need to have a whole host system. We have our pure water whole host systems available now. Our other systems do not get a Berkeley, or other systems think they're equivalent. They're not. They're going to get rid of cysts and parasites. That's it. They're not going to get rid of the toxic chemicals completely. They're not going to get rid of fluoride. They'll tell you they do. These filters are not going to generate what we call lab reagent grade water. You need to get our radiation protocols, and you need to be prepared to cover your vegetables if you have an outside garden. And at the minimum, you need to have the materials to build a greenhouse, even if you have a farm, because we could literally have the atmosphere so radioactive from three major sources: Fukushima, a proposed and pushing for a war in the Mideast that's going to hit the Bashar reactor, and an almost certain, triggered by this event in the Mideast, exchange of nuclear weapons between India and Pakistan, because Pakistan's have committed their nuclear weapons to defend Iran. If Syria falls, Pakistan is going to defend Iran with nuclear weapons against Israel, and their military bases will be targeted, plus European cities. This is going to get very bad.
You notice as we back down from Syria, you're not hearing the reports of minor clashes and bigger clashes in Kashmir. You're not hearing the reports of Chinese and Japanese warships in the Pacific with their islands in dispute. All those things were interconnected to the Syrian thing.
Yeah, they're all connected because the battle lines for World War III are now being drawn. The navies are operational. We're in DEFCON 3, which is one step below a nuclear war launch on command sequence level DEFCON 4. The Russians are similarly there. We've re-scrambled what we had in mothballs for many years.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi.